Hi everyone, and welcome again to my blog, Points on Politics. So this week I wanted to talk about the Green Party and where I think the party is at the moment, and how I think it's progressing, and what the future holds for the party. So after last year's general election, I think we can say that the Greens did not too bad of a job. They gained 1 million votes, their highest number of voters in the election. In any election so far. It gained a real national platform by being able to be on the TV debates, and it was able to kind of project itself as a party that could be an alternative to the mainstream, to that of Labour, the Tories and the Lib Dems. So in all fairness, I think it did relatively okay. Of course, it only gained 1 seat. From that aspect of it, I suppose we could say, after all the hard work it did in getting itself into the, mainstream's attention, it didn't really succeed in trying to break the Westminster elite that exists between the Conservative Party and Labour. So for a party that has, gained quite significant media attention during last year's election, I haven't seen really anything from the party. There's nothing in the mainstream about them. I've scoured the internet for a while now looking for any stories relating to them, and it's been more about stories on local issues and minor issues rather than on big major issues that we've heard anything from them. Have they gone into a phase now where it's kind of they were doing well, they were on the way up, and they only got that 1 seat in the election, and that kind of took the wind out of the sails? So I'm wondering whether or not they are actually dwindling away, and whether or not they can actually be that political, or rather that they can be that mainstream political party that they're trying to aspire to be. In all fairness, though, I think what we need to realise and what we need to remember is that if we look at the other minor parties, so the Lib Dems and also UKIP, they have featured as well very little in the mainstream media. However, where I would have presumed that they would have had much more attention at the moment is on the EU referendum. I mean, the Greens are well-known supporters of the EU, and even though they've said it does need to become a much more democratic institution, they have been big supporters of it, and they want us to firmly remain in there. However, I suppose one of the main reasons for this is that the BBC Trust has actually denied the Greens from having a platform for a party political broadcast in the run-up to the referendum in June. So I do think that had the Greens been given the chance, they could really be the promoters, the leading promoters of the referendum and the Yes campaign, because even though David Cameron is leading the Yes campaign and he has had these reforms, I do kind of agree with Natalie Bennett. It is kind of a negative campaign by David Cameron because, and members of the Yes campaign, because they're saying that we need to stay in because if we don't, such and such will happen. Whereas I think Natalie Bennett and the Green Party want to take a much more positive outlook and say, this is what we get from the EU. These are the positive things. This is what it does for us. And I think actually, if they could take a lead on this issue, they could definitely push Labour to one side, because it seems to be the case that even though many in Labour want us to stop in the EU, Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, yes, they do want us to stay in, but they're known to have their reservations about their EU. They're known to have their scepticism about it, and they're known to be quite critical and against it at the time. So it does seem to be the case that the Greens could have a positive, promising platform here if they were given the chance, of course. I read a really interesting article on the Greens in the New Statesman by India Burke a few days ago, and she talks about how she believes the Green Party is kind of getting its groove back, as she titles her article. She talks about how the party is actually going to do quite well at a time when Labour and the Tories are sinking under the pressure of what she terms decentralised politics. So the politics in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, She's saying here that, with this decentralisation of British politics, this is the avenue now in which the Greens will do well. And she says that, in the up and coming elections in May for Wales and in Scotland, the Greens are expected to do rather well. And I mean, one of the things that Burke also talks about is that how the party is going to try and form coalitions with different parties on a range of issues. So on instances like Trident, it does seem to be that it would try and create a coalition with Jeremy Corbyn's views on Trident and agrees that it should be scrapped. And even so on UKIP, he said that it would agree to have a coalition with the party on the issue of electoral reform and reforming our electoral system. When I think about the Greens now, one of the things that I think will significantly hamper its progress is the election of Jeremy Corbyn to the leadership of the Labour Party. Now, first of all, I thought to myself, when he became leader, that many of those people who had been traditional Labour supporters but had decided to go and vote for the Greens in last year's election because they didn't believe in Ed Miliband, I believe that for many of them, having Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party would encourage them to flock back to supporting the Labour Party and to leave the Greens. And interestingly, in an article on the Guardian website, one of the first comments on there was from someone who had an interesting name. It was Sexual Chocolate, their name was. But they commented saying, "I just let my Green membership expire. Now that we have a Corbyn-led Labour Party going back to the roots of the Labour Party and doing away with Blair's Toryfication, means I can, for the first time in my life, vote for a main party with confidence. Having a Labour Party with economical and social policies more in line with my own means I no longer need to reach so far to find a suitable party." And I did think to myself, with this view, is this kind of representative of many of the people who voted for the Greens in the last election because they didn't believe in the Labour Party of Ed Miliband? So I think this is highly concerning for the Greens, and I think that this could be very, very problematic for them in the local elections coming up in May in Wales and Scotland, but also in the future into 2020. So to end this podcast, I wanted to focus on Natalie Bennett's leadership of the Green Party and what we can take from last year's election and do we believe that she's the leader to take the party forward? I think in the TV debate, I don't think she did too badly. I think she was quite fortunate in having people like Nicola Sturgeon of the SNP and also Leanne Wood of Plaid Cymru on that panel there of the people who were debating, because all three of those women seem to have similar views and they seem to be coming from similar ways of life in trying to go against the Westminster elite. The thing that sticks out in my mind about Natalie Bennett is her performance on the LBC Radio talk show with Nick Ferrari. I mean, it was a car crash of an interview. It was excruciating. It showed a real great deal of naivety in Bennett, a real lack of political skill and a complete lack of preparation. And whatever anyone says about politicians, I think we can all agree that most of them will never give you a straight answer, and we can always kind of expect that from them. But I think when they're talking about figures in the economy and how they're going to fund things, they must have some level of accuracy when it comes to their figures. When Nick Ferrari was asking Natalie Bennett about how she was going to fund the building of social housing, she had no figures, and she was just completely inexperienced in dealing with this. She showed complete lack of preparation here, and she tried to excuse it with having a cough. There was awkward silences in the interview, and the best part about it is that Nick Ferrari wasn't really pressurising Natalie Bennett for these answers. he wasn't acting like Jeremy Paxman. He wasn't quite aggressive or anything like that. He was just quite persistent with these questions, and she just did not know how to answer them. So where does that leave us with the Greens? And I think there is some light. I think there is some promise for the party, especially in the up and coming elections in May, if they can really get a foothold there. I think with the movement towards the referendum, if the Greens can really highlight how they've not been allowed a platform to have party political broadcasts by the BBC, then they could really, try and influence public opinion there and try and get their voices heard. But I think it's going to be I think it's going to be tough. I don't think it's going to be plain sailing. I think the Corbyn effect, I think the fact that Jeremy Corbyn is the Labour leader is going to be very difficult for the party. It will lose some voters, I believe, from this. And also, it needs to make sure that the leader is fully prepared. They can't have a situation again where Natalie Bennett doesn't know the answers to a political question. That is all from this week's blog post. If you'd like to comment on any of the issues that I've discussed today, please feel free to do so. If you'd like to tweet me, just tweet me at Liam McConkey, and I'll respond to any of your tweets. But thank you very much for watching this blog post, and I'll see you next time.